most of these case studies where the dream state comes upon a person suddenly, who knows what the being can do after that? I mean, like I've told you before and on your show, where some of these beings would actually assault people. They would literally just immobilize their victims, and we would call it paralyzing sleep paralysis. But in the purpose of doing that, the earliest texts say that these entities not only induced people into dream states, but they did that for the purposes of extracting the soul itself from the body. But anyways, yeah, so again, the idea of them plucking the soul out of the body, I think they're studying the soul in and of itself. What are its capabilities? Well, and again, I points me back to the idea that they either authored it, or they're trying to hack it, or it is a food source in a way. Now this gets back to, well, if there's such a threat to us, why wouldn't they kill us all? It's not a good argument. The proper argument would be, why are they leaving all of us alive? Right? It's like you go back into the hypothesis Dr. Philip Turner had, where we are essentially cattle to them. And being cattle to them, they have to have us replicate in order to keep our species alive. But anyways, getting back to this idea of plucking the soul from the body, it's not just what they're doing, it's what they're doing to the soul. Now we're getting into, again, Betty and Bob Lucas case study. Betty Luca, when she left her body, they did something to her consciousness to such a degree that when she re-inhabited her body began to manifest skin anomalies. Now, what's important to notice is that they did not take her body in this specific case study, in this specific abduction account. Other times they have, but in this particular case, they took her out of her body, and yet the scoop marks still appeared, which would suggest to us that a lot of these experiencers are having out-of-body abductions. And we're looking at them, collecting the physical data and saying, yeah, they must have scooped something out of your flesh. I would hypothesize to everybody that's going to be listening to this and watching this, that what happens to the soul happens to the skin. Again, that what we're witnessing are subdermal skin anomalies that are moving from underneath the skin to the surface, because what they're doing is manifesting to the soul and then through the skin. This is not unusual. Well, I'm going to get started with a story that...
Well, hold on. Three. Yep. We got to be professional now. Three, yeah. 2, 1. Welcome to Beyond the Forbidden. Today on the show, I got a frequent flyer mile guest, returning guest, Nathaniel Gillis. How the hell you doing, man?
Doing good, my brother. It's always good to be with you and your people, and I'm excited, as always, man, to get into some stuff. But, yeah.
So on my end, I always wear a hoodie because my office is cold as hell. And I know it's a little warm where you are. You look fine. I don't see any sweat or anything, but I'm so like I don't know if I want it to be warmer in here. I don't know if I want to be in your shoes, but like my office and the air is only on like 74, 75, you know, but my office is like the coldest room in the house. It's the perfect place to take a nap. But yeah, dude. But
so hopefully it's comfortable, my friend.
So and I got like shorts and socks on right now. So like these, I got these knee-high socks on. But
there we go, bro. Styling and profiling.
Not quite knee-high, but so what do you want to talk about today?
We're going to get into the hypothesis that many are following, that I stumbled upon myself in my own work. It's the idea that at least some of these beings we're encountering in abductions are extracting the soul from the body. And there's many ways to describe it. Peeling the soul out of the body, which is more like what they're doing. And so I'm going to get into some case studies of bilocation, near-death experiences where who and whatever we're dealing with have fabricated entire theatrical productions in order to gain access to our souls. But if you want, I can go ahead and get into it, my man.
Man, do it, man. The floor is yours, dude.
So early on in my research, uh, obviously I was researching demonological literature, and I came across this idea, and it was repetitive over and over again. It was repetitive in Mesopotamian ritual bowls as well as in writings in biblical antiquity. And the idea was that there were these entities called dream demons. And you'll find that this whole concept of a dream demon is essentially you're laying in bed at night or you're just doing what you're doing at the house or your job. And an entity appears to you, and it appears to you for one purpose only, and that is to induce you into a dreamlike state. Now, in most of these case studies where the dream state comes upon a person suddenly, uh, who knows what the being can do after that? I mean, like I've told you before and on your show, where some of these beings would actually assault people. They would literally just immobilize their victims, and we would call it paralyzing, sleep paralysis. But in the purpose of doing that, the earliest texts say that these entities not only induced people into dream states, but they did that for the purposes of extracting the soul itself from the body. Now, I think this is one of the aspects of the phenomenon that would give us insight into the following point. These are not just horns and hooves. They're not just, okay, the classical definition, okay, that's a demon or that's some kind of creature. What we're dealing with again is an entity that is working off of a certain amount of preternatural knowledge. Not just that, but by virtue of incantation or technology, these beings have the evidenced interest in pulling the consciousness out of the body, in manipulating the consciousness or the soul itself. Now, Dr. Carla Turner was one of the, obviously, I always talk about her, but she was one of the great proponents of this theory. In her research, she encountered many experiencers who, prior to the actual abduction occurring, something triggered bilocation in them to the point that literally their body is here, but their consciousness is somewhere out there in the ether. In the actual abduction was not occurring to the body itself, but it was actually occurring to the soul they extracted. All right. Sorry, I had a phone call.
Oh, you good?
And it was having to do with the soul they extracted. Now, there's something troubling going on here because what we're witnessing in these abduction accounts is that they are actually teaching the soul how to accomplish jobs. Now, the weirdest thing ever, we're looking at different case studies like Betty and Bob Luca. We're literally experiencing this is crazy. But Betty Luca was peeled out of her body in the middle of the night. Bob Luca heard a noise in the room. He's thinking, okay, Betty is having a nightmare or something. And he looks over, and to his astonishment, something lifts out of Betty's body and flies out through the window with these beings. Now, Betty Luca was seen in two places at once. Now, even more than Betty Luca, Bob Luca, according to Betty, was on his bed at nighttime and he was putting his socks on, getting ready for bed. And all of a sudden, this energy filled the room. She blinked, and as soon as she blinked, she sees Bob in two places at once. Now, Betty and Bob Luca's particular case study, it's intriguing to me, and I think it's relevant and germane to our conversation because they were taking Betty Luca's soul and placing it into a chair in which this chair itself was tailored to the contour of her consciousness. The consciousness itself was being taught how to fly the craft. Now, the problem is that Betty Luca never flew a craft in body. So they were not training Betty Luca for muscle memory. Neither are they training a lot of these other experiencers. for muscle memory. Why? Because I believe, and others, and other of my colleagues believe this too, that in many cases the abduction is actually preparation for the afterlife. Now, this entire hypothesis is not something new. Again, that this phenomenon has been occurring for millennia, but we first interpret it as demonic. Now, here's why. And again, when they're pulling the conscious out of the body, there are almost two fighting sets of memory. Now, in other words, what they're doing is they're looking at these experiencers and they're saying, okay, we're training the soul on symbols, languages, ish problems. How are you going to solve this when you get to this point? And the problem is, in many accounts, these people literally do not realize that the entire abduction they're experiencing was out of body, even up to the point that they, quote, become physical again. Two dueling natures, even the soul itself being designed by something and someone, and then the body it's inhabiting being designed by something or someone. Now, this is very interesting too, because Dr. Carla Turner, she was working with an experiencer, and this entity told her something that I've been bouncing around for a while. I've even asked some of my mentors about it, but it makes perfect sense if you think of it. They told her that the soul is a different species than the body it inhabits. So what we're dealing with, again, is a species within a species, which I believe would make perfect sense as to why they have so much knowledge about that unexplored potentiality within all of us. Not just the knowledge, but the ability to, at any time, press pause on your entire body and pull you out of it, and then do things to your soul or your consciousness. Now, I first heard this mentioned in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 13. Now, there's probably going to be a lot of people, oh my God, he's teaching something Christian. I'm not really teaching anything Christian. As a matter of fact, you see a lot of Christians researchers, they won't even touch this because it's so outside of their peripheral. But the prophet Ezekiel, in one passage, he mentions these beings. They had two different characteristics. Number one, they were called piss prophets. A piss prophet in antiquity was a way to monitor the fertility of women. And more than that, in the book of Ezekiel chapter 13, Yahweh Elohim says, I have aught against you, those who hunt the souls of men to make them fly. Now, some researchers would consider this to be the UFO abduction phenomenon, set just right there nestled in the fertile soil of Ezekiel chapter 13. Ezekiel chapter 13 is referring to, it's so fascinating, it's referring to a replication process, a self-replication process. And the way the author structures it is that those who should live are dying in order to facilitate those who should die. The way he phrases it is this: those who should die are living, and those who should live are dying. And the purpose, it's incredible, his concept was that there is a currency to consciousness, in that some of these beings in and of themselves were performing necromantic rites in order to preserve their own existences. Number one, the idea was not just that they took the soul out, but it was that they were feeding on our attributes, literally using the soul as a source of food. Now, in this passage, he goes from literally saying, okay, I have aught against you, those who hunt the souls of men to make them fly. He also goes again into the piss prophet concept, where not only were these beings abducting souls, but they were also monitoring the fertility within women, constantly probing and seeing if they were fertile or not. Now, both of these are behavioral patterns that when you combine them with each other, they're obviously what we've witnessed throughout history in the UFO abduction phenomenon. Now, again, this is interpretation of the Old Testament, but if we apply these behavioral patterns to modernity, you'll witness them throughout these case studies. I'm sorry, I'm not on my game today, dude.
You're good, man.
I'm working on it.
You're good.
Now, again, your knowledge of the soul should be disturbing, because in many cases, if you see them, or if you witness an aircraft or some kind of alien ship, we have case studies where they've actually pulled the soul out of the body and held it with them as they're both looking down at the victim.
Do you want to help support Beyond Forbidden and receive extra content that's not seen anywhere else? By becoming a patron, a few things you will receive are the full-length 90-minute or 120-minute podcast episode. Members will also receive a private link of the video podcast and will only be exclusive to Patreon members. In-person, face-to-face interviews with some of the most well-known, respected researchers. Behind-the-scenes footage of interviews not seen anywhere else. And that's just a few perks. So what do you have to lose? Cut out one brain-rotting, overly processed Happy Meal a month that doesn't do anything beneficial for your mind, body, and spirit, and become a Patreon for just $5.